and welcome back to Real Estate Connections podcast. And I usually do my intro after I visit with my guest, but I'm going to do the intro right now because she doesn't know this. So today we're visiting with Amy Bolduc from Grounded in Maine podcast and a million other things. And the reason we got to Amy this Independence Day is because my contractor said to me, "Who is the person you would like to talk to most? Who would be the funnest person to talk to?" And I said, "Amy Bolduc." And she said, "Oh, of course it's Amy Bolduc." We're going to talk today with Amy Bolduc about sustainability. But first, she's going to tell us all about sustainability. Amy, welcome to Real Estate Connections podcast
Oh my
today.
gosh, I'm so happy to be here, Mary. I'm such a fan. I've loved your podcast from day one, and I'm just, I'm in moving mode in the last couple of years. So your content is very, very interesting to me and helpful. So I'm glad
Great,
to be here.
great. So, Amy, I know everybody says don't say how did you get started, et cetera, but what is sustainability? What Grounded in Maine is about sustainability, I believe. If it isn't,
Yes.
correct me.
Yep, it
And
is.
what is sustainability? And what is the most important aspect to you?
Well, sustainability is a huge word. It can, and it means, and I ask every guest that I have, what it means to them because it means something different to everyone. For me, I mean, I think technically the word is like continuing. And a lot of people have said, being able to continue. And so, um, the state of the world right now, a lot of people have said, I don't want that. Like, that's not good enough.
Mhm.
We need to do better. And, that's why we do this podcast. But, for me, it's a lot of it is like, it depends on the day sometimes. But often it's like, leave the world better than you found it. Like, the spot that you are taking up, like, make that better. Um,
Oh,
and for me, I love food and I love, working in the ground. So like, being able to have that space to beautify and nurture is really important for me. And so being able to grow food, to know that I'm eating the healthiest food that I'm able to, and knowing that I have a part in that, and that responsibility is really important to me.
so
So, I mean, very simply,
that is simply. And as I listened to your early podcast, you talked about you started making jam.
I did.
And is that when you started to kind of get the interest in talking with other people about sustainability or
Oh,
Maine specifically?
well, I mean, I've been making jam for years. Excuse me, I have a hair.
Mm.
But I've been making jam for years. When I first moved in with my now ex-husband, he made fine money. He was self-employed and I worked for companies and I made not a lot of money. So I was like, if I grow the food, it's almost like saving money, right? Like because I don't have to buy that food. And then if I learn to preserve it, that's, even better. And then I just yeah, I mean, I started making jams just because it was easy because I was afraid and I'm still afraid of a pressure cooker.
Oh, I am too.
But so a water bath canner I can do no problem. And so jams are easy to do in a water bath canner. And so I did a lot of jams and I made jams for my sister's wedding in 2014 and like for all of their guests
As a
and
favor, is kind of a
as a
favor.
favor,
Favor,
yes, so
right.
everyone got to take a jar of jam home and the feedback was incredible, but I was like, no, I should not be in business. I'm not a business person. And then 2019, 2020. I mean, early 2020, before
Mhm.
COVID started, I was in a car accident in 2019 and was laid up for 4 months. And so while I was laid up, people were like, "You're gonna catch up on Netflix and watch lots of TV shows and stuff." And I was like, no, no. So I was doing, workshops and webinars and stuff like that, and just like learning stuff. And somebody said, um, in one of the workshop, like a lot of the things I was doing were, like self-help type of thing. And somebody had said a couple of things. So one said, just like life is short. If you're meant to do something, just do it. And then also said, you don't need to know everything before you start. And so I was like, I'm not a business person, but it's kind of nagging at me to do this jam thing. And so I started a jam business, and is the best time to do it because I wasn't going anywhere. I could sit on the phone and wait on hold for an hour and a half for someone to help me with the licensing and stuff for the jam business. And so I launched my jam business I started making jam in May of 2020
Wow.
during COVID. Um, but I was talking to a friend of mine years ago. We were volunteer gardeners at a local farm that grows. They're still in operation, organic produce, just to donate it to food banks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were sitting around, and we were working and we were sitting on the ground and weeding and talking about how cool it would be, because we were both interested in homesteading. um, how cool it would be to start a YouTube channel. Like the two of us would have a homesteader come on and talk to us about different skills, and then we would bring it home and try it out and then report back. And that was like, it was really exciting. And then, she kind of fell off, and I was like, I am not talking on YouTube all by myself. Thank you very much. No. And then, so it was, then I talked about starting a podcast for a couple of years. Um, and then a friend made an offer that I couldn't refuse, um and then Grounded in Maine started in June of 2022.
Wow. So 4 years.
4
You've been doing it
years.
4 years and consistently, even with the move out of state, I was
Yeah.
so amazed that you kept Grounded in Maine going.
Yeah.
And because you knew you would head back into at least the New England area at that point, right?
When I
Yes.
when I first moved, I didn't know that, but it was pretty clear soon after.
So I got to meet Amy at New England Podcasters, and it's a group that's been around for 2 years now, started by this unbelievable Andy Lyons. And it brings together podcasters who are geographically located in New England. And Amy was still living in Maine at the time, and we would convene in Massachusetts. And I got to know Amy. And then she did this unbelievable thing and moved to Virginia. And we want to talk about the move because that's what I've been focusing a number of episodes on what are the decisions around moving? What kind of work would be good to do before you do that?
Mhm.
And how do you assess whether the move was right for you or not? And if it's not right, what kind of corrective or alternative steps will you take? And Amy, I love the message. Life is short. I really love the message. And my audience tends to be midlife, later in life, not always, but that tends to be. And so we we are hearing that more and more. We're believing it more
Of
and more.
course.
That's really it. We're believing it more and more. The other thing that I really am fascinated is I'm not a businesswoman. You know, I think every entrepreneur is a business person. I really, really do. And whether or not we like it. And when I became a realtor, I didn't know I had to start a business. I thought it just landed.
Mhm.
But there are many wonderful growth opportunities, as we say, in that world. So,
Mhm.
Amy, will you share with us about your decision to leave the state of Maine and what went into it and what you would advise listeners about what you learned?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know that I learned anything that I wouldn't do again. Just because I'm stubborn. But so, I mean, I ended up getting divorced in 2024, and one of your past guests, Marriott Fry,
Oh, yes.
I had been talking to, so I knew that I was going to have to move after the divorce, and probably out of state, because Maine is very expensive now. And I happened upon Marriott's podcast, and I was following her on Instagram, and she had posted something, and I commented on that, and I don't remember what the post was about or what the comment was about, but she reached out to me. She's like, "Do you want to hop on a call?" And I was like, yeah, okay. And so we were like fast friends at that point, and so she talked me through a lot of stuff, and there are a lot of things that I I believe the things that she says, and I think that they're really, really important. She talks a lot about proof of concept, which she did on your podcast. However, as a newly divorced person,
Mhm.
not making a lot of money, like I can't afford to live somewhere for a month. I also have pets. I have a dog and two cats, and at that time I had chickens too. So it was not realistic for me to do that. I moved to Virginia because one, it was far from my life and I needed
Yes.
some space,
Yes.
but also because I work remotely, but the employer had it's like a tax presence or something. There's a tax presence in Virginia that there isn't in like the Carolinas and even like southern New York. And I don't understand why all of that, but Virginia was one of those states. And so I moved to Virginia thinking, if I'm going to be far from everyone, at least I can really focus on gardening and I can grow a food forest and I'll have a longer growing season. So that's great. Um, it just didn't work out that way.
So I agree with you. I understand the emotion, that sometimes propels us. And Mariette Fry, Frey is how she spells her name. And we'll put her name in the notes too. Mariette moved 20 times in
24
24
years.
years, some of which it sounded like might have been fairly reactive moves, like you're describing in divorce. I too, I've done very similar things. So, proof of concept, which she says is why don't you describe what it is?
I mean, my understanding is to, like rent a long term, get like a long term rental for a month and just test it out. Like see if you would fit in and make friends and have places where you would be able to go. Um, and just stuff like that. Would you fit into the area? And
Mm,
I should have done that. If I could
mhm.
afford it, I should have done that. And I would recommend it to anyone who could.
And the same thing happened to me. We were thinking our daughter moved to Boston to school. Mom, I'm staying in Boston. And we were thinking North Carolina is where we were headed for our retirement. Mom, if you go to North Carolina, I'm not going to see you very much. So my Massachusetts roots prevailed, and a dear friend said, "Go spend a month or two." Well, I was an intense realtor. There was no way I
Right.
was going anywhere and spending. So the practicality. We even bought our house sight unseen, Amy. So I get it. I really, and we sold that house, by the way, within 11 months. So I get it. I get that you get propelled.
Mhm.
And it isn't always easy. I think what Marriott was thinking, okay, I'm living in New York City and I really want to live in the desert. And, that's quite a contrast, right?
Very much.
Yeah. So Maine and Southern Virginia is not so much a contrast in the sense of kind of what the economies are and things like that. There's the agrarian world very much down there as well. And so you did it.
I did it. Yes. Where I moved to though was it was not like Maine, unfortunately. It was a very, and it's, but I spent a couple days there. When I went to look at houses, and there was one house that I absolutely loved. And I can't remember if I told you the story, Barry.
Haven't heard it.
When I came on a Friday and I left on a Monday. Um, and there was one house that I was looking at. It was on Egg Farm Road. I had chickens. Egg Farm Road's perfect. And I would, if I had gotten that house, I probably would have stayed. But I looked at it. I loved it. My realtor said, it's an old house, Amy. Like it's probably got problems that are not reported. And so he said, I've got some great houses to show you. So, he showed me some other houses. And after So that was on Friday. That was the day that I got there. And then Saturday afternoon, I was like, I've looked at all these houses. I'm not feeling anything. Like, I can't stop thinking about this house. Can we just put an offer in? And he called and it was already under contract.
Oh,
So, and it was only on the market maybe 2 days. And that house actually came back up available July. So it was a year later. Was it? Yeah. It was a year later, I want to say, because I was no, it was a month later.
oh,
It was a month
it
later. So
fell out.
it fell
Yes.
out
Yeah.
because I guess there were cracks in the foundation.
Yes.
Um, and so it was not going to go the same type of loan. And so I was, he called me and he told me that, and I was like, put an offer in right now, do it right now. And, the people that were under contract found another loan type to do. So
Oh, so they were able to do it. So you didn't get the
I
dream
didn't get
house
it.
that you want. Yes. And those exactly. And my sense is you and as I've talked to you subsequently through the year, the kind of home you're attracted to can be what we call an antique home. Or
Mhm.
we called it that in Northern Virginia when I was a realtor in Northern Virginia. Everything was built after 1970 in that area, it seemed.
Right,
And so everything else was antique. No, there was a definition for antique. And
right.
so what comes with it is the risk of all kinds of things. New
Sure.
septic system, $50,000 a new septic system. So when you're on a very limited kind of income and you were just coming out of a marriage, that's very typical. So is it your sense that people who would like to live off the land gravitate toward these old farmhouses or these old properties?
I feel like maybe, but I think also the older properties come with land. Like, I'm looking at real estate, so
Right.
many are on just like a few thousand square feet of lot, and there's not a lot you can do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like, it's not an ideal home, but the property was beautiful.
Terrific.
It was beautiful, and it was such a sweet home. And but so then the house that I ended up buying, I looked at my last day there, and it had just gone on the market, and it was um like 15,000 over what I was approved for. And so, and there were no like outbuildings at all. It was just a small house on an acre of land. And but there was no place for my chickens. And so I went a little bit under my approval amount. And but I also, as soon as I walked in, I said no, I feel nothing for this house.
Yeah.
But then a couple weeks later, no one else had looked at it, and they said that they were probably asking too much, and so they went down. And then it
The best
happened.
decisions are hindsight, aren't they? In some cases.
Ah,
Do you have a house to sell still?
I do have a house to sell
Oh, we
still.
have got a great listing in Southern Virginia in a beautiful little town, and it has new solar panels on the
Oh,
roof, and
the
and
electric
it
bill is not even $10 a month all year
and it was
round.
loved. It was loved. And so Amy's contact information is going to be here on the show notes. And feel free to reach out to her or her agent. That would be really, really good.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So you made a decision that life was short, Amy.
I did. I did.
Mm.
I've done it a couple of times.
You did it.
I did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just, doing things the most careful way and thoughtful way has not really worked out well for me.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that I'm flying by the seat of my pants, although sometimes I probably am. But I'm also just like, I'm not waiting for things to happen anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Really good. I feel the same way. I am practical, considered, and then at the same time, I'm just sure. Just like I was sure I wanted to talk to you, in terms of what our respective podcasts are.
Hmm. Right. I think that, there are a lot of areas where we coincide.
Mm-hmm. They really are. And what are you looking for now? What would be your dream right now, Amy?
Um, oh gosh, I
You're
don't
back
even.
in Maine. You're back
Yeah,
in
I'm
Maine and you're
back in
renting. Yeah.
Maine. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
somebody had put an offer on my house back in the beginning of April. It was a 30-day cash offer, and it was a reasonable offer. It was a lot under what I was asking, but it was reasonable. So I accepted, and then I rented a U-Haul, I rented the storage space, everything was in order. I had 30 days to get out, so I was packing and getting rid of things, and then they backed out. So and it was April, and in Southern Virginia it is already hot.
Right.
And I mean, this day that we're recording, it's in the hundreds in Southern Virginia, and I don't know how I would handle that.
Yeah,
I
it's a hot summer.
some people are okay with that. I am not
Right.
okay with that. Like,
Yes.
I mean, I'm in Maine, and it's supposed to be 92 feels like temp today, and I'm holed up in the house. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
leaving.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to be what I'm hearing a lot this weekend. We're in Massachusetts, same temperature,
Mhm.
and people are staying in, and not because they don't have air conditioning or anything, or they have air conditioning. It's just feels different than it has been.
Right, for sure.
So, what's ideal, Amy? What's the next want?
I mean, so there are a couple of things that I'm looking at. So one, our friend Andy Lyons, she contacted me a few weeks ago, and she called me on a Friday. She's like, "I'm calling you because I don't want you to wait on this." Because I'm just too excited. So she has a friend who is actually her podcast guest this week, who had a friend who just bought a farm in New Hampshire, and they
Oh,
have a one-bedroom apartment. But she did not know this, but Andy's ears perked up knowing that I'm looking for a place, and so she said, "This farm doesn't happen to have an apartment on it, does it?" And her friend said, "It actually does." And so, um, that would be ideal. I would love that, but I'm second in line, so something would have to fall through. But it's on a 46-acre farm,
how
and
far up in New Hampshire?
it is near Manchester.
Oh, yes, that's perfect. Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah,
My
I
goodness.
went to see it last weekend, and it was beautiful.
Really
The
nice.
people
So,
are so nice. My
could you
dem
farm there? Would you farm? Would you work there? Oh, awesome. Okay, so here's another pitch, audience. This beautiful woman wants to farm and is looking for opportunities to farm and to help you farm. So again, reach out. Information at Real Estate Connections Podcast or Amy. You'll see Amy's jam garden.
Amy's
Amy's
garden
jam
jam.
garden jam
Yep,
at Gmail, right?
yep, yep, that's
So
me.
we'll see. That'll all be in the links. I'd like to, and I wish you the best of luck. And I want you to stay in New England so badly. I really, really do, because New England podcasters benefit so much from you and your commitment to our community. And it's a very diverse community,
It's a
and
very
you are
diverse community.
committed to it. And I put an episode out. I get a note right away from Amy that she listened to it. And that was really awesome.
Yeah. And so there is another option that I've been looking at, and just I it's sort of a long shot, but it could be perfect. So in Western Mass,
Mm.
there is a tiny home, like tiny home, but it's on almost 28 acres of land. And so, my end goal, my ideal goal is to have people around me, like build a community, compound, commune, whatever you want to call it, but just people with like-minded people working together to take care of the land and to preserve food and stuff like that. So it would be a great start. It's completely affordable. Um, so that's
You could buy it. You could buy the 20 acres. Mhm. Excellent. Okay. All
and then
right.
people can add on.
Okay. And so I'm going to be doing some subsequent episodes on tiny homes.
Oh,
And so and there are some wonderful people out there into the tiny home world. And there's actually a group called New England Tiny Homes. And that sounds like a franchise organization where they are really expanding on the accessory dwelling unit legislation that's been passed in New Hampshire and here in Massachusetts. And I'm not
right.
sure about the rest of New England, but those. Okay, Amy, I want to talk to you about sustainability.
Okay.
Okay, so we have solar.
We have solar.
We have a plug-in hybrid. Um, we've done things at that kind we've made our decisions at that kind of level. I have a little composting bin that I'm religious, using, but we give usually the compost away to neighbors and stuff.
That's fine. My
So
episode coming out next week is on composting.
oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, excellent. 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 And I'm around a number of people here who've actually, quote, farmed their land. It's not, we have 2 acres, but they have less than an acre typically, each of them. And they're working it, really working the
Mhm.
land. But I have to tell you that when the US went and canceled its accord, the various, ecological accords with the world, I just got so despondent about it, so sense of hopeless.
Mhm.
All that work, that Al Gore did, which I thought was very much on the fringe at the time. I was in Washington, very much on the fringe. I'm glad he worked that hard and he
Mhm.
kept with his messages, but I'm like everybody else. I don't want to hear the messages. I don't want to hear how bad it is, and but I have to tell you, I'm discouraged. We are replacing our plug-in hybrid with another plug-in hybrid. So we're committed to living and we thought about geothermal. We're not going to do it because we're older, but
Right.
talk to the audience about what do you have to be perfect at sustainable kind of ecological activities and
No, no. And I mean, I know it's a bummer that things have gone backward in some ways, but at least, Al Gore and other voices have been really loud about the the necessity of, energy independence, green, all the eco-friendly stuff and green energy, clean energy stuff like that because it has gotten through. I mean, I've heard that clean energy has overtaken the fossil fuels in the US and in other places, in spite of things that are happening. Like
right,
they,
the emphasis.
they can take the support away from it, but we already know, like we've seen it, we know. And so it's gonna be a lot to get, some backing and a lot of support on a lot of things, but we can't go backward. And that's, it's super frustrating and it's, it can be depressing, but we just have to do the best that we can. And the best that we can is just doing something. There are a lot of people, and the reason for the podcast is that, there are some things they'll just adding the label sustainable adds
Hmm.
so much cost. Like solar panels are not a cheap option for a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
But the fact that we have like community solar and we've got solar farms that people can buy into and enjoy some of the benefits of that um is, just we don't all make lots of money. We're in a capitalist system and we are not the 1%.
Mhm.
Most of us are not. And so we just need to do the best that we can. And, like I said in the beginning, like taking care of my little piece of the earth where I am is doing the best that I can and sharing the message that, that people have, just giving that platform for other people to talk about. But I mean, in my guest on Tuesday, Alexa Pavan, her Instagram handle is Go Green with Alexa, wherever you find her. But I've been following her for at least easily 2 years, probably 3 or 4 on Instagram. She does a lot of reels. I mean, her whole everything she does is about sustainability. So her parents came from Brazil to the United States, and they're in
Oh.
South Florida, and they owned snorkeling and diving business, and so she grew up in the ocean, and um, it's something that I have not really thought a lot about. Like, I
Mhm.
don't want to send things into the ocean, but just the fact that because I can't see under the top of the water,
The reflection. Mhm. Yeah.
I can't see what's down there, so I don't think about it. It's like out of sight, out of mind.
Mhm.
And so she's a diver and she sees all that stuff and she's super passionate about it. But she's a copywriter, she's a content creator, and she does diving and she like in her spare time, she volunteers as a composter and recycler for events. just because she just cares that much. And so, but we all don't have the opportunity to do that, but she does, and so she does. And she also uses a composting company, which she's
Yes.
talking about on the podcast.
Yes. Our town just offered composting services, and occasionally you'll see a certain bucket
Yeah,
outside.
yeah.
Yes. And in the olden days, I don't know if you lived in such an area outside of Boston, we would have pails in the ground in some kind of a buried cement holder.
Oh,
And my mother would send me out, this in the 50s and 60s, just outside of Boston, and she would send us out, and you would take the garbage, not the trash, but the garbage, and you'd step on the lever, raise it up, and there were maggots and all kinds of stuff, and you'd throw your compost. And
that's
then
why you're
once
making that face.
yeah, because I was a kid, and then once a week, a certain truck would come by, and that certain truck would collect what was there, the composting. I don't know what they did with it. It went into Charles River. I don't know, but anyway, but it was
Yeah.
a favorite for the dogs to chase. Let me tell you, it smelled
Oh my
so in
goodness.
many ways than one. But thank you. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen to Alexa
Yeah.
on the composting. Amy, I've just enjoyed learning more about you and your commitment and your passion, but also your vulnerability in terms of sharing your decision making and how there's that crossover between what is passionate and then what is practical. And you've taken a lot of risks, and I honor that. I do honor that. I'm a risk taker
Mm.
at the same time being practical. And so thank you so very much. And do you have any advice? Is there anything that you usually close your podcast with in terms of we're
Um,
each
I mean,
responsible?
I think that, one of the things that, oh, I have lots of things, but I mean, one of the, because your podcast is called Real Estate Connections, my mind when I was thinking about what we would talk about was like, the value of connections, and in, being vulnerable, like letting people know what you're looking for if you're looking for
Yes.
something, because you never know. I mean, that whole thing with Andy finding the
Mm-hmm.
apartment in New Hampshire, like that
Mm-hmm.
is so random that somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to go visit my friend. She just bought a farm." Does that farm happen to have an apartment? Like, who would do that except a friend that,
And
that
third level
knew
down, it wasn't the best friend. It was somebody, somebody,
a
somebody.
friend of a
Yes.
friend of a friend. Yeah.
Yes.
But so if you are looking for something, tell people.
Great. And that is the connections. So Real Estate Connections podcast, the subtitle is Where Relationships Open Doors. Right.
Amen.
So if not a farm out near Manchester, maybe a tiny home on 20 acres in Western Mass. Okay. Best of luck, Amy. I know we're going to be following your journey, and do tune into Grounded in Maine, and awesome podcast, and fantastic people, and a range of people, just like the issue of sustainability is a range of issues. Amy, happy 4th of July. Keep cool, and we'll see you very soon. I know
Next week.
next
Yay.
week.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you found this conversation useful to you and your real estate goals. You'll find the contact information for our guests and any links they recommend you have in the show notes. And should we be able to help you identify some strong real estate professionals in your area, drop us a note at info@realestateconnectionspodcast.com. Thanks again, and bye for now.